Let's look at why we determine distance on a number line by the absolute value of p minus q. And to start this, let's assume that both of these numbers are positive. So I have my two numbers p and q to the right of 0, and I'm going to assume for the moment that p is the larger of the two. Then the distance from 0 to p is determined by just p. But we don't want that distance, we only want the distance between p and q, so we're going to remove the distance that we don't want, which is q, the distance from 0 to q. Since p was bigger, this is positive, and this is equal to the absolute value. Now let's assume the opposite, that p is smaller. Then what we would need to do is go all the way out to q, and then remove the piece that we don't want, which is p. However, this is the same thing as negative p minus q. P minus q is a negative number, so this is negative of a negative number, so it's the same thing as the absolute value of p minus q. If both of my numbers are negative, this follows a similar idea where we look at the distance to q and then remove the distance from p, and then we take the absolute value so that we know that distance is always a positive number. Now let's look at the case where one is positive and one is negative. Let's assume that p is positive and q is negative. Then when I talk about p, that's the distance from 0 to p. And then I need to combine it with this distance to q. But since q is negative, this distance is actually the positive. It's the negative of a negative. So we have a minus q here. And since distance is always positive, we need to make sure we do an absolute value. So the idea is we're going to go out to p and we're going to go out to q, and both of these distances need to be positive. P is already positive. We need to change the sign of q. If, on the other hand, q is positive, we can think of this as once again going out to q, adding our distance to p, which is negative p, so that we change the sign and make it positive. This is the same thing as negative p minus q if I factor out a negative sign, which is the same thing as the absolute value of p minus q.